I've immersed myself into customer service and experience since the very beginning. I've stayed in this lane. Early in my career, customer service was really the focus of people interacting with people. Then somebody real smart said, hey, let's call it something more exciting like customer experience. And so for a short time, customer service and experience were the same. But then somebody said, another smarter person said, you know what? Experience is more than just the interaction with people. It's the entire experience from the moment somebody thinks about doing business with a company to when they finally do and continue to do so. And that can include the experience they have on the web, the experience they have with marketing promotion that's sent their way. And today that's done through multiple channels, social media, apps, email, text messaging. There's so many different ways to communicate with customers. It can be done through the personal interaction that they have with an employee of a company, either face-to-face or remotely. So the packaging, when you open a box, how do you feel? I mean, think about what Apple has done. I mean, the way you open an iPhone, the box is just a cool experience. You get excited about that new phone. So many, it's really, experience now covers so much. But I've been lucky, and I love this. And I've been lucky to stay in it for, almost, I guess I'm about 38 years. So getting close to 4 decades. I know I don't look that old. COVID-19 was, I don't want this to come off the wrong way, but it's because there was a lot of death and sadness and destruction, and businesses didn't, some of them really suffered if even they were put out of business. But if you can get beyond that and look at what's happening today in the CX industry, COVID in some sense was a gift because it forced companies to up their game. Everything that they're doing today would have happened without COVID-19, maybe 3 years, 4 or 5 years into the future. We would be using the same innovation and technology that was already there. We would be using it anyway. What COVID did is accelerated opportunities for companies to deliver really a better experience and push them to a higher level. And I'll give you an example. About 2.5 years ago, I wrote a book titled The Convenience Revolution. And this was all about how to be easier and more convenient for your customers in every way. And I identified 6 specific convenience principles. And some of these were breakthrough. It's like, not many companies are doing this. This is what disrupted a competitor, or even in some cases, an entire industry. Look at what, Uber did to the taxi cab industry, right? They created a more convenient experience. Some, like my automobile manufacturer, the dealer that I would go to buy my car, the reason I chose them is because they were more convenient. They delivered my car to me at home. I didn't have to go pick it up. Whenever I needed service, they would bring me a new car, pick up my car, and take it back. Well, COVID-19 hit, and all of a sudden, automobile dealerships said, oh my gosh, we got to figure out a way to stay connected to our customers. They're not coming to us. We now need to go to them. So that delivery, which was a breakthrough for that dealership that I'd been doing business with, all of a sudden started to become an expectation. At first, it became kind of a trend, but then an expectation. And I think that's what has happened in a lot of the customer experience world, that companies have gone from, oh, this was a breakthrough that we now have to make a part of our business, and it's to be competitive. So I think it's been great for the consumer if they look at it the right way. I think it's been great for the company if they see it as the opportunity to grow. They were forced to grow, which was going to happen anyway, just happened faster. What happened in a really short period of time, the customer's expectations turned a little bit. And some companies recognize that right away. And by the way, there was a period, in a very short period of time back when the world basically went into kind of a lockdown mode, not just a country or a city, but the entire world. And customers were very forgiving for the companies that forced them to have to wait. Sometimes it was, I'm calling to get support and I have to wait. Sometimes I wanted to order something and there was a back order and I had to wait. We were tolerant of that as consumers and customers, more so for the first month or two. But then it's like, come on now, we got to get back to feeling like business is normal. Well, the expectations became normal of like, this is what I used to have. Don't take it away from me. I want back what I used to have. And so companies scrambled to give them that experience. So I think I'm answering your question, but I think the companies that were able to step up and move quickly and nimbly and recognize what they had to do to keep their customers happy, and also recognize those changes in the expectations. You know, I used to come and see you personally. Now I'm not going to do that. So you better make doing business remotely with me, just as easy as it was before. And so we had to shift and come up with ways to do that, you know. And I think just as important as how we handled customers is how we handle our employees, because we don't do it right with our employees. They can't do it right for the customer either. Let me give you a process that we work through, and it doesn't matter if it's, because of the pandemic, but whenever you want to improve, the way to improve is not to look at what your competition is doing. It's to look at what the best in class are doing. So I would sit down with the team and I would say, you know what, we've been, dealing with this pandemic now for a year or so. What are the companies that are doing it right? Who do we do business with personally or professionally? Is it Amazon? Is it the car dealer that I mentioned? Is it the grocery store or the restaurant? One of our vendors? What are they doing so well that we just say, man, they've nailed it? Make a list of what that is and then look at it and say, what could we do that's on that list that we're not doing? And that's how you start to improve, because and then, by the way, then you have to create the process of making that improvement take place. But, so many people are wondering, where are we going to go next? Well, look at your competition if you want, but all that is copying. And I would recommend you do at least consider what they're doing. And if you do copy something of theirs, figure out a way to make it your own. But learning from best in class is really where you can start to say, here's the opportunity. Because here's what I wish for everybody listening to this interview is that they are so good that people don't say, oh, they're the best in the industry. No, they're one of the best in the world, period. So this is, back to what I said earlier. I don't think that anything brand new came out of this. I think there was already existing technology that just wasn't being used. What's interesting, I just had some great conversations with some leadership in the customer support world, and it's really interesting how the challenges that come up that employees are dealing with. By the way, I believe that what's happening on the outside of a company with customers is a direct result of what's happening inside. In other words, if you're doing it right internally, customers are going to feel it on the outside. Yeah. If you take a look at the best rated customer service and experience companies that are out there, there's all kinds of rating systems and awards that people get. And then you go to glassdoor.com and you take a look at the best companies to work for. Isn't it a coincidence that many of them are the same? Well, not really a coincidence. It's because it works. So as far as new innovation and technology, I think what's happened, again, is they've adopted technology, and some were better at it and quicker at it, and some are willing to look outside of their industry to find these technologies and capabilities that they didn't have before. The one thing that some companies did really, really well is, and some people say they pivoted. I think that's not the right word. When you pivot, you turn, which means you turn your back on something. And I think many companies didn't turn their back on something, but they became more flexible about how they do business and the way they do business. And I'll just use my company as an example. When uh, we used to always say we had 4 major income streams in our company, all related to each other. Me going out and speaking at an event is one income stream, and that got switched to becoming virtual. So there's an example of being flexible. Maybe I used to do 10 to 12, maybe 15 virtual events a year, and I've been doing that for years. Well, now I'm doing 10 a month, right? But I'm not going on stage and doing them because conferences, where could you get together with 1,000, 2,000 people in a room? Those days are coming back real soon. But so what do? You have to be flexible. I never pivoted and turned my back on speaking, but what I did was I became more flexible. And of course, we had our online training, which is on demand. That didn't change. We had our trainers that go out and deliver content. Well, that did change. Now our trainers deliver it virtually, just like I deliver virtual speech. But we also came up with several other income streams that we said, you know what? We haven't focused on these before, but we've got to be a little scrappy, a little innovative, a little, experimental, and try things that are tied to what we do. I have a friend of mine in the restaurant business. The government, his local government, forced him to shut down because restaurants weren't allowed to stay open other than curbside and delivery, which he really didn't have that. He wasn't set up for that. But what he noticed is that grocery stores were allowed to stay open. So what did he do? He turned his small restaurant into a food market, selling the ingredients that went into his, recipes. And people would come and they would buy, semi-prepared meals that they would go home and finish off at home. But he turned into a restaurant, I'm sorry, he went from a restaurant to a grocery store or a food market. That's pretty innovative, right? So I don't so much think that it was total newness that happened as much as innovation, flexibility, tweaking, trying something a little bit new, but everybody stayed in their lane. Well, number one, are there going to be any changes? Well, we've already experienced huge changes. The question is, are we going to go back to where we were before? And the answer to that is probably not. There will be opportunity to move back to some of what we had before, but one of the questions I love to ask leaders is what changed in the last year that you were surprised that you're not going to go back to the old way of doing? And many people say, oh, so much changed. And it's not that they're going to not do what they used to do. It's just they found different ways to do it and they like it and it works. The idea of that car dealership that was disruptive when they delivered my car, when I needed service. So to give you the example, 25 years I dealt with one dealership, and this other dealership, I just randomly went in there one day just to look at a car that I saw in the window. And I said, I'm not going to buy this car from you because you're 10 miles from where I live versus the other dealership that's walking distance from my office. I drop my car off. I walk to work. I don't have to worry about getting a rental car for the day. And they said, hey, we'll deliver the car to you. That's what we do. And so they disrupted a competitor. Well, what happened in the last year is all the automobile manufacturers realized we got to do this if we want to get customers to buy from us and do business. So we'll go to them. Well, that's not going to go back to the way it used to be. The difference was, I think that, and let's just take a look even at restaurants and delivery. I used to go to my favorite Chinese restaurant and they would deliver at no charge. Well, today they deliver for a fee. It's just a small fee. It's a few dollars more. It's a delivery fee because that's now become normal. And by the way, as a consumer, I am happy to pay that fee. So I'm happy to pay for convenience. And I think that as the pandemic forced companies to become easier to work with, more flexible to work with, that's not going away. And by the way, the customer is willing to pay for it, which is good news for the company. I just want you to, everybody listening, if there's one thing I could share, it would be to really think with a mind of flexibility and be totally open to looking outside of your industry to see what others are doing well, to incorporate into what you're doing, and sit down. And this is not a one-time exercise. You should do this on an ongoing basis. Maybe it's once a quarter, once every 6 months, but get a team together, and realize that innovation isn't about technology. It's about coming up with different and newer and maybe more effective processes that have nothing to do with technology. It's just the way people think and the way people act today. And that's going to change. We can't go back to the way we used to be. We can do business the way we used to be, but we have to have a mindset of how people are thinking right now. And some of them will want what they used to have, but we can make it better for them if we pay attention to what's happening around us.